out of game. And I am an attorney in real life. And so I'm going to sort of moderate this kind of like discussion and kind of tell you guys how we're going to um, have it go. So first, we're going to do sort of like little introductions about, I think, who we are generally, and to reckoning, and just like sort of what our roles are going to be. And so for me, like I have only been LARPing for a couple of years. I'm very, very new to it. I was actually introduced to it by Micah, um, who I met in a karaoke bar. So literally could not be more new to this. Um, and we um, we ended up sort of after this last event, we sort of like ended up teaming up together to try and form this LLC, Longleaf Adventures LLC. So like these six people who you were initially introduced to, we are part of like this business that's going to kind of like run the Reckoning as a LARP event. Um, and we're all going to kind of have different roles in that. I'm going to be mostly focused on like legal stuff and like out of game kind of stuff and how to like tie those things in. And otherwise, I'm probably mostly going to play. I am not a lore person. I'm, like I said, very super new to this. Um, and so that's gonna like not be my strong suit, just like, you know, putting that out there. So different, we're all going to answer kind of different types of questions. So that's kind of like who I am and sort of my relationship with LARP and my relationship with this group. So, Liam, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Liam. I am I started at Weekend Warrior. This last reckoning was actually my first reckoning. I know Micah and Sasha through Weekend Warrior slash real life, and yeah, I talked to Micah a lot about LARPing. We had talked last year about starting our own LARP, and this just kind of conveniently seemed like a good idea. So here we are. That's all I
All right,
got.
Micah, do you want to go ahead
Yeah,
and introduce yourself?
sure. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Cool. My name is Micah. I'm Owen Brightleaf in game. For those of you who went to Reckoning last year but not year one, wondering who I am, I went to Reckoning year one but could not, unfortunately, attend year two. But I LARP at Weekend Warrior, Brung, Beacoline, Malleus. Um, there's a couple more new ones. Drakenfest is my other big one I go to. So I've been LARPing for probably 6 years now. I absolutely love it, and I think Reckoning has a really cool opportunity to be a really, really incredible LARP. So, um, yeah, obviously the community is great. This is something that we all think is worth um, putting a fresh start on. So I'm really excited. I know the rest of the team is as well. As far as what I'll be doing, a little bit of everything, not so much logistics. That's not my strong suit. So I'll be working a lot with rules and lore, um, and making sure that um, this game has incredible bones and making sure that it just lives up to its potential. So that's kind of what I'll be doing. So most of my stuff will be in the background. I will still be playing Owen. That's my plan anyway. So yeah, that's me.
Um, I wanted to make a joke about how we could call you Lore Daddy, but then I was like, this wouldn't be appropriate. But
I should have made the joke anyway. So
Oh yeah, I should add as far as what I'll be
um,
doing. I'm probably just gonna be doing like lore and some of the in-game stuff with Micah. I'll be
on
his like right
Discord.
hand man and Discord, but that's less of a. I think that's more of a once it's set up. I think that's a group effort in terms of moderation.
Fair. Sean, you want to go next?
Sure, why not? Hello, I am Paymon, or formerly known as Sliker or Slikar in the Orc group with our leader in here, Joel, who is Droog. So my part in Reckoning from this point on will kind of be in the shadows, head of security, making sure things are going smoothly throughout the event. And then another thing that I want to really focus on is going to be with the people running the plot, the people coming up with game ideas. I want to make props and design props and come up with other elements to add to the game that'll make it more interesting. So that's pretty much it. I don't I don't really have too much to add, so I'm gonna leave it at that. But
Cool. And then is Sasha on?
She is having technical difficulties. We're having trouble figuring out how to get her on the.
I
Okay.
invited her to speak. I'm not sure if she just needs to accept that or what.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, when Sasha gets on, she'll be introduced, but last is Joel, who I'm pretty sure a lot of people already know.
Yeah, I probably don't even need to introduce myself now because Sean already did that for me.
You really did.
Yeah, I'm Joel. I'm also Mariash, currently leading the Suzak Mar, or at least the staff person in charge of Suzak Mar. And I'm also Droog. I run the orcs. I'm going to continue to do that as long as everybody's okay with it. Yeah, and I also do marketing and stuff for the LLC as well. So I'm pseudo in charge of social media and eventually website stuff and all of that as well. So.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I do kind of just want to address a question that I didn't really see asked, but I've sort of seen talked about a little bit on the Discord of just, you know, a little bit about like running this sort of as an LLC. And I just want to say there's like a kind of a lot of thought going into that, and we're kind of trying to really work on making this something that can happen year by year. And so we're just trying to approach it in a little bit of a new way. So with that being said, we asked you guys to submit some questions. A lot of them were repeated. So we went ahead, read through them, sort of talked about them. Different people are going to take those questions. And then at the end, we're going to go ahead and allow you guys to do a Q&A. I think is like would they come on stage? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we can invite people to speak, and then they will be
Oh,
able to
okay,
speak
sweet.
their question.
Yeah, so if there's something that like we haven't addressed, please go ahead and ask it. I think there's going to be a lot of other ways too to ask questions. I think questions are probably going to come up as we do this thing. And yeah, so please have some grace with us. If you can believe it, this is my first time doing something like this, and I have gone to court a million times, and I'm way more intimidated by this scenario than anything I've ever done in court because I really just this is like a really cool niche and community, and we really want to do right by you guys. So if there's yeah, okay. So the first question was this is a less definite question, more something to think about. If someone was interested in being undead in an orc, what will tickets look like for them? Would they have a reduced ticket? And for each NPC faction they're part of, and would it be a flat ticket reduction? Stuff about tickets and NPCs and the orc faction and the undead. Who wants to go ahead and take that?
Liam and I can probably tag team this one. Or actually, no, Joel, you're perfect for that. You go.
All right. Yeah, so it's not like a stackable discount. It would just be like one discounted ticket for whatever NPC or volunteer role you were trying to do. So it's not going to be like, oh, well, if I'm an orc and an undead, my ticket is $20. Like it'll just be like, say the ticket is $75 instead of the $125 or whatever. I don't know what the ticket cost is going to end up being yet, but it would just be like the $75 ticket would be the one that you would get because you're volunteering / NPCing / hanging out, working security, whatever it is.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that we have like all of those roles set up well ahead of time for roles that are NPC. And I don't think that just an undead qualifies out the gate. But yeah, just to qualify what Joel said.
Yeah. And I guess what I'll also say is we haven't totally nailed down what staff and volunteer stuff is going to look like. I will say, like, yeah, we're figuring out like tickets and how to like compensate people for their time. We want to be really mindful of that. But we can't but what I will also say is we're thinking about it, and as soon as we know exactly how it's going to work, like, you guys will know. We want to be as transparent as possible. Um, and all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hop on to the next one if we're cool
Um,
with that.
one thing I'll say is that the reduced price will depend on what volunteer role you are fulfilling. So it's not just going to be like a set amount off for everybody, just to be clear.
Yeah, and we'll figure that part out. Okay, number two, how is the faction leadership going to be handled or changed moving forward with the LARP? Um, so generally, and guys, I'm just going to read what I wrote, and if anyone kind of disagrees with it, just let me know. Um, so the first thing I want to address is because I don't think we sort of like address, or maybe we do actually address this somewhere else. Um, is we really want to change the word faction. We want it to be more culture, and we'll kind of go into that later. But basically, we're still figuring out how that's going to work, but it shouldn't change too wildly from what you're used to, or at least how I understood Reckoning leadership to be. And so once we have to sort of finalize some of the lore stuff and some of the staff stuff. And once we do that, you guys will know, and we'll kind of put that stuff on the website too. Um, but if I'm sure Micah and Liam, if you guys want to add something.
If the question is specifically like who's going to be what culture leads, that's something that we, even before the ink was dry, we were talking about it. We were talking about, what we wanted to, the people we wanted to work with, the people we wanted to give those positions to. But in addition, uh, how those could look different in a way that the players, and by that I mean give faction leads time to play, or culture leads, sorry, time to play and be players. Um, but this totally ties into other question we'll answer later on, and that is, I'm just gonna introduce this concept now because it'll get talked about a lot later. We really want to change the culture of a few things, and that's how we role play, how we set up rules, and also just amount of stuff you can sink your teeth into. When all that stuff changes for the better, then the culture lead position will fundamentally change because the kinds of things you have to lean on them for will be different. And again, we hope this is going to be in a good way, in a positive way. Um, so there still will be the concept of, culture leads because that's an important position. But when you have a lot more stuff to do and a lot more stuff to sink your teeth into, and role play is better and all of that, then the position will change in terms of what is needed from them. And hopefully the end result is less taxing on them and less taxing on you as a player. But as far as specifically who those people are going to be, that's something that we've been talking about for a long time. We're definitely looking into finalizing that. So again, it's one of those things where as soon as we know, we're going to communicate that.
Unless anyone else has anything to add, I will also say I'm sure it's going to be frustrating to be like, we don't know, but we're going to let you know. But like, that's also just sort of the reality of the situation that we're in. We just can't figure it all out 100% all at once. Wish that we could. All right. Number three, are there any thoughts on how to balance the PvP, or player versus player aspect of the game? In prior years, it seems that a lot of time it was faction versus faction fighting and ended up being one-sided. So generally speaking, the way that I'm understanding this, we're going to be introducing story elements in the lore and mechanic gameplay elements in the game, right, Micah? Like, maybe this is more of a
Yeah,
question for you,
sure.
right? So
Yeah, great question. So that's going to come in with a few different fixes, a lot of different fixes actually, because we recognize that is a huge problem. I wasn't there for year two, was there for year one, and then I heard about it at length for year two. So we're going to attack this problem from a bunch of different ways. One is going to be better mechanical balances. Um, we're not going to change the general roles of things, but every different class you can play is going to have some tweaks. Those are going to be more things you can do. They're going to be more balanced. So that's the first thing. Just from a general PvP standpoint, is how do we get comms, healers, bone knitters, spell scribes, and how do we get you guys more involved? And then from the sage versus fighter standpoint, we're obviously working on mechanical balances to all that. So that's the first part of the solution. The second part of the solution is giving you guys, and again, I'm going to beat this dead horse a lot, but I think it's really important that we get this message across, giving you guys more stuff to do. Not to say, hey, we've got a lot more story, go chase it, although that will be part of it, but stuff to explore and discover. New just mechanics that are, hey, here's a new thing you can interact with. Here's new props that you're going to interact with. We're going to lean way more heavily on orcs and stuff like that. So distractions, those are just Reckoning always had that stuff there. We're just unleashing the full potential. And when you have all that stuff to do, it's going to be way less, well, Hadrian versus Rivlin versus Suzak versus Vadarkeen, right? Now, we are also going to, this is actually kind of a fun problem to have. When all that stuff is introduced, now we have to figure out how to get it back to this still can be faction versus faction conflict. When we introduce all this other fun stuff, you guys might not want to like get in conflict with each other as factions, and we're going to have to work as a team to figure out also to kind of reintroduce, hey, this is still at its heart has some faction conflict too. And then obviously the undead is going to be a huge thing. So that's something that is at the heart of all of our work. It will be a lot better.
Would you say that?
Just to add something real quick, as players, if you guys have any ideas of game design, games to be had, and quest line, storyline, anything like that would be kind of entertaining, just shoot me a message too and send me some ideas that you think would be entertaining or fun to add to the game so we can like play around with that. And then jumping back to the combat thing, I know a lot of people have been asking me about shields and if shields are going to be able to be broken and say 2 hits of a red. We need more player feedback with that. If everybody thinks that that would be a balancing thing, and I know that there's a lot of players that really want that, and there's a lot of players that really don't want that, but we need to get a better understanding on.
So to that end, we're probably going to be putting out some feedback forms for you guys to fill out. We'd love to get as much. Don't necessarily direct message us about like game mechanics stuff, but some of our when we look at introducing the shield breaking, we're going to do a feedback form to determine just how like people would be okay with that working, whether or not we really want to introduce it to the game, because it does change things slightly. But the biggest thing that definitely like go ahead and reach out to us about is probably quests. Like if there's a quest that you think my character could help like contribute to or develop or participate in some way, once we have the culture leads like set aside, like definitely reach out to them and say like, here's a quest that I would like to do, and I have this item that I made that can be part of the quest, and here's how I'd like to introduce it to the game. Because like we're going to create our own content, but it's still Reckoning, and there's lots of room for players to create their own content as well, and for us to help you guys like realize.
So, Liam, someone asked if there was going to be an email to send bigger questions. We're going to have something like a suggestion box, right, in the Discord, or do we have that already?
I wasn't able to get it to work the way I wanted it to work. If you have a really big question, I don't know if we have it fixed yet, but we will have the email, and if you do have a big question, it should be like contact@reckoning.com or reckoninglarp.com or whatever it was. And once we announce that that's good to go, like feel free to barrage Sasha with questions. But in general, if it's a question that you are okay with asking in front of everyone else, like it's not, a quest that you want to keep secret, we have under the public category on the Discord. You should see it right above the staff Q&A leadership questions. Like, feel free to ask pretty much any question you want in there. But if it is something you want to keep, like it's kind of personal or private or whatever reason you have for it, go ahead and send us an email. We'll take care of it.
And I just want to say, like, a few points of clarification. Obviously, we want to be like as transparent as possible and make ourselves available. We totally hear you that one of the bigger complaints was an inability to maybe communicate with leadership. But also be respectful of the fact that we do have separate lives and we're trying to kind of figure this all out. So have a little bit of patience. If we're not responding to something, I can almost guarantee it's not going to be because we're ignoring it. And we are going to provide you with sort of filtered ways to give us this feedback. So just try and pay attention to that and go through those channels too, because we're going to try and come up with like ways to regularly address those, right? Okie dokie. I'm going to go ahead
Just
and continue.
quickly, Gabby,
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
topic of emails, I'm Sasha. I'm the 6th member of this team, and I'm going to be predominantly putting, or predominantly be the face behind the email. Going to be dispatching specific questions to where they need to go to the different faction leaderships, but you know, the questions I can answer myself, I will be. I'll also probably be handling a lot of your kit approvals. So if you have an issue that needs to come to the email, just let me know. As soon as we know what the email address is and it's ready to go, we will let you know, because I think we are potentially starting with a different address than Reckoning had previously. Not 100% sure, but we will let you know, and then I'm happy to answer all of your questions.
We're maybe we can go ahead. We'll actually get to your question. Someone just asked about the faction to culture thing, and I think there's a way to address that in a minute, but we will get to that. Is there any plans to expand on the in-game economy, like adding additional resources to add the gameplay loop? When I went ahead and answered this question, what I said was, in short, yes, we will expand more on this in a future lore drop. I don't know if there's anything more you guys want to say about that, Leah, Micah, but that's pretty much where we're at. Yep. Like, and also, guys,
Secret.
we are gonna want to keep some stuff like secret, so it's fun for you guys to be surprised by. But yeah, we're excited.
As far as secrets do go, I will clarify that things that you need to know in terms of how to react in terms of role play, or your need to know rules regarding things, you will always know those before the event. The only things that we will keep secret might be like specific things where we want to give your character a chance to RP against them. So like if it's a mechanic in the game, we will tell you what it is ahead of time because you will need to know.
Yeah, and that will be tied in with lore drops, but is going to be some discovery. There's going to be a lot of discovery, and we know we have a lot of new LARPers. That is, and I'm going to talk about this too. We're talking about changing the culture of what Reckoning currently is and moving it to what we think is going to be fun for everyone. Discovery is a huge part of that. So if you get to Reckoning 3, and it's like, well, if I'd have known XYZ, I might have done XYZ differently. Yeah, your player's surprised. Your character is surprised. That's stuff they didn't know and no one else knew. And that's not us trying to cheat or make it not fun. We hope that it's a fun surprise as long as you guys can lean into it with us. But again, if it's rules, if it's how to play the game, if it's mechanics you're going to be interacting with, those will always tell you ahead of time.
Yeah, I straight up am gonna try and keep some story beat a surprise for myself so that I can have fun too. All right, number 5. So we obviously got a lot of questions about staff, so I kind of grouped a couple together. So this was sort of a two-part question. A, what would be the best way for us to reach out if we wish to assist as volunteers for the game moving forward? B, when it comes to volunteer staff positions and opportunities, is it going to be based upon proximity of staff, or will it be meritocratic? Meritocratic. I don't know how to say that word. Okay. So here's where we are kind of still working out the processes of that. We will let you know when there is an opportunity for something to sort of apply for or sign up for. We are 100% going to let you know. And as to the second part, the I don't want you guys to think that this is going to be a super insular thing. We're talking about ways to sort of avoid that. No matter who we choose, though, we're going to be choosing based on merit and contributions. We're not just going to be saying, hey, Joe Schmo, who's never RP'd before, why don't you have this super important position? We are going to be like taking that in mind. If anyone else wants to kind of address that, you guys can go ahead. That is sort of where I'm at with the staff and volunteer stuff. And I'm also really excited that you guys are excited to sign up. I can't wait till we give you opportunities to sign up to see who signs up for what.
It's a great problem to have that this player community wants to be so involved. Everyone is a volunteer or an NPC or a faction lead or yada yada, then no one's a LARPer. So that needs to be the right ratio of volunteers and that to other players. Because yeah, that's just the way it needs to be. But it's a great problem to have that everyone wants to help out in their own way. And we definitely need the help. There's 6 of us already, so we can delegate. We can only do so much. We know for a fact we cannot pull this off with just 6 people.
Can I
And with
cut
the
in real
plans,
quick again?
absolutely, yeah, go for it.
So again, with props, guys, anyone that has props that they've come up with, this is a very much so player ran. It's player agencies, player ran game. We're gonna try to change that a little bit more. In the past, players have come up with their own games, their own ideas, their own props, and they haven't communicated with the staff what exactly it is that they would have been doing. And they kind of ran things which went really well. So, for example, Mac, he had like a little bone quest. I don't know how many people were at Reckoning 2, but he did a fetch quest with bones. What we ask of you guys, if you come up with props, if you come up with ideas, and you want to run player owned, like player games, player ran games, just communicate with us before you do it if you can. But it is very much so accepted. It doesn't have to be a part of like our grand plan or our scheme of like what we're coming up with in the background. Like obviously, what's already been said is we don't want to have too many spoilers. We don't want to like give away things that would be game breaking, or like we don't want to give too many spoilers out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you guys want to run your own little games and have props for yourselves, do that. But just communicate with us, please, and that'd be very much appreciated.
It's
And
not
we'll
because
sort of
we need you to do it, but it really, if you communicate with us, it gives us a chance to help you and make it more meaningful for you, because we can incorporate your plots into the wider world of Reckoning. You can have more of an impact if we know about it.
Yeah, and to
I'll
clarify, sorry, Gabby, you want to go? Okay.
you go.
To clarify what Sean was saying versus the question that I think is what was being asked, that kind of stuff is at the heart of Reckoning, is player run stuff. Anything you want to go and run with it, just if you can let us know first. Our job is to give you stuff to interact with so that you can then make your own fun, basically. We're going to give you tons more to interact with, mechanics to help play all that out. As far as the question of staffing, though, I think what Sean was talking about is different. Like we don't want you to get confused that, oh, I can't do my own plot because I'm not staff or because I'm not a volunteer. That's not the case at all. If we have you being a volunteer, that's going to be grunt work. Someone's going to be coming and helping set up. It has nothing to do with bringing your own props or coming up with cool stuff to play.
Yeah, don't feel like you
that's
have
gonna
to
be-
have
yeah.
that all approved. Like you don't have to have everything approved as far as that goes. Like you want to bring a bag full of bones and hide them in the woods and say, "Hey, I got a quest line for you guys too. Find my bones, bring them up to me, and like, yeah, do your own thing, have fun. Like that's the
Right.
whole point of this." But
Yeah, for sure. I think
let
I
us
just want
help
to make sure
you
you guys
too,
right. Let
because
us
like,
help you help yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the day, we do have to remember that this is supposed to be like a game that we all get to play and engage with. That there are going to be different ways to interact with that some things are going to be players created, some things that we're going to create. And I also just want to say, whenever we say let us know, please know we're also going to provide you avenues with which to do that, and nothing has to happen right now. And we'll come up with timelines and dates. That's something we're actively working on. right?
And those timeline and dates will be shared with you guys
Yeah.
once we know.
Yeah. Boop, boop, boop. All right, next question. Are we allowed to bring our own food? Can we use wooden shields? And last, will the age limit change? That was a three-parter. Lots of questions re the food. So uh here's how I understand the food situation. We are probably not going to be catering the event for a lot of reasons. Number one, like from what I could see from this year especially, um is I think it's hard to financially support catering and also provide an immersive experience, and also provide an event that is affordable. Now that I'm on this side of this, that seems like one of the hardest parts. So we're probably not going to do catering. We're definitely going to be encouraging you to bring your own food, and we are certainly thinking of ways to kind of incorporate ways to make the food part of it still immersive and fun. And I think we will be providing some version of like, yeah, like a culture cookout. That's the perfect word for it, right? Or like a feast or something. We haven't super nailed down like what that's going to look like. But we're thinking a lot about food and how that's going to work out both logistically and sort of like immersively. Anyone else care
So
to expand on that?
If
yeah,
anything,
so
we're gonna do a 1 day feast. We're gonna figure out the logistics of doing a 1 day feast, and then at least provide kind of in the past what Thomas did was he provided fire pits. He provided like little like cauldron style stovetops, which I think in the past year, not too many people were aware that they had those in their camp, but they had like cooking stoves readily available. But the big thing is communicate with your factions. We're going to have a better structure with the player liaisons, better leadership, better communication across the board. People are going to communicate how we can cook and safely do that. And if we have to provide like surfaces for proper cookware, anything that needs to be so like logistically, like have it be safe, that's going to be accounted for. So the main
Our
thing.
hope is to take the fun of the soup competition and have that be every night. But also, logistically, the catering is not a great way to go. But if you were going camping for 4 days, for example, you'd bring the food with you and you'd think that was
right.
going to be a necessity from the get go. So
Long
if we plan ahead, everything will be great.
yeah, long story short, we are not going to be providing food for everyone. So bring your own food. That can look a ton of different ways, but we will be providing guidelines, as Sean said, for how to do that safely, and also providing guidelines for how to do that immersively, so that you're not out there with a sleeve of Oreos. I mean, honestly, I bring Oreos to every LARP, but I put them in like a little period thing, and I make a little story about, these are biscuits from whatever.
I had
Yes,
one of my belt pouches is literally just full of goldfish, and I'll take a goldfish out and eat it all the time.
there you go. So we will be providing, a lot of other LARPs provide like they'll do videos or checklists and be like, hey, it's days away. Make sure you're bringing this. But to the first part of this three-parter, we're not going to be providing food. I will, but we will be providing safe and immersive guidelines for how to do that.
To this last one, I just brought a bunch of, because I just kind of came last minute. I wasn't going to come. I ended up just working it in. I brought a bunch of raw materials from my fridge, packed it in, went and ended up just cooking stuff from that, which felt very immersive and fun. I think that there are ways that we'll be able to do this, and I think there'll be ways that we can kind of account for not making it super expensive for everyone. I think it'll be a fun element that we'll be adding in.
Also, just in the chat section, I do see everyone's calls for proper washing facilities. We'll make sure you have access to water, and I promise that I'll put the dish soap in a not Dawn bottle, so it's a little bit more immersive than that. But we'll make sure you have a
Yeah.
place to wash your dishes. Don't worry.
Yeah. I think to my understanding, actually this brings us into this next question really nicely. Just in terms of the immersive experience. What does the switch from factions to cultures look like mechanically and roleplay wise? How can we as players change our mindset to help with the transition. I ultimately think this is going to be a Micah and Liam sort of tag team
So
question.
before we go on to that one, did we answer the wooden shields and the
Oh.
age limit one from the
Oh
last one?
shoot, you're right. Thank you. Wooden
Yes.
shields.
No wooden shields for safety reasons. Obviously, you got to get you guys to stick to foam. But if you do have a wooden shield that you would like to use as camp decoration, just give the staff a heads up, probably your culture head, and as long as you are you understand very clearly that you will not be allowed to take it into combat in any form, that will more than likely be allowed. And then
Okay.
and then the age
Anyone
limit.
else on the shield? So for the age limit, I think this depends. Here's my take on it, straightforward. I think it depends on how it affects our insurance, frankly. What I saw is in the past, it's been 16 and up. If I had to guess, that sounds like a price that a lot of insurances will like kind of cover. I'd be interested to know if the community wants like a younger age limit. I do think that would sort of like affect perhaps some of the things that we'd be able to do. But if there's like a strong feeling about that, I'd be interested to know. My gut is no, especially if it affects insurance.
Gabby, if
who
I may, I think if anything, because participants who are 16 can come with a guardian. If you're under 18, you need a guardian with you. I think if anything, it would be changed to be probably an 18 plus event rather than going younger. Is the way I saw that question. But
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our main
I wasn't-
discussion has actually been
I was
having
just
the
saying,
event
I
be an
didn't
18
take it like
plus.
that. So yeah, so we'll talk, I guess. It may
but yes,
change.
insurance,
I mean-
location are big factors in that.
My first brain went right to insurance. I was like, I don't know, guys, if we can allow younger kids, of course, everyone's 18 plus. Yeah, we'll let you guys know on that part of it. What does the switch from factions and cultures look like mechanically and roleplay wise? How can we as players change our mindset with the transition? So like I said, this is definitely a you guys question. But the way that I'm understanding it is we're trying to make a very immersive experience, and part of the immersion experience is sometimes just hanging out, right, as a community, as the march. Not everything is adversarial. And so kind of Liam, you told me the difference between kind of seeing things from a faction, from a culture, that really helped put it into perspective.
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to look at it is that we want to reframe how we are, because faction denotes a certain connotation that is everyone kind of moves as a group. You're not a military, maybe with the exception of the Hadrians, but that is really going to be internal to the Hadrians for how they want to run that themselves. Everyone else, you know, the Suzak Mar, the Vatican, the Rivlins, they're not like a unified group. They are just a culture. They have certain values that they share amongst themselves, histories, their familial units, etc., etc. You know, much like a real-world culture, they will all share certain aspects, but they will not always have the same answer or the same intention with things. So, for instance, and I think we're technically going to talk about this later, but the biggest example is going to be like the Jaegers. I know that the Jaegers wanted to do things that were antithetical to what the rest of the Rivlins felt like was in their best interest. And realistically, they're a culture. The Jaegers have their own player ability to make their decisions, and we would like to allow them to do that. That we are not a military. You know, when the cultural leader says something, not everyone has to do what they say. We might, for RP reasons, make it in your best interest to do so, but you do not have to. You know, I know there are other LARPs where everyone at the LARP is in a military, and realistically, when the staff says do this, that's what everybody's going to do. But that's not how we want to run it here.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, how I'm going to approach it, right? This is a very low stakes thing in which you can do sort of tribalism. I like my culture because I like my culture thing, and you can also work within that culture and think of ways to role play and think of how you're going to interact with another culture. It's just a vehicle for role playing that comes with a history and a lore, and you shouldn't look at everything as adversarial. When you think faction, you think it has to be versus, but not everything necessarily has to. Cultures don't have to clash. Sometimes they can come together and find points in which they, embrace each other. And sometimes they're going to clash depending on, whether it's how to handle the orcs or what have you. So just sort of reframe your thinking about how we're approaching the different cultures.
So to
It's
that
it's
end,
going to take me
actually,
a minute.
Mike has probably got a lot to say about this, but we're going to be adding some kind of role play safety rules into it. He's got a lot more on this than I do in terms of making sure that people feel comfortable in the role play that they are doing. Um,
Yeah,
Do
we
you
can.
want to? Yeah.
Well, I know there's a specific question about that, but I can go ahead and say that now instead of it comes up later. We can say I already answered some of it, and I can
Sure.
clarify based on that. So,
Okay.
the role play culture at Reckoning, when it was first in year one, um, when asked about role play and stuff, and it was in a lot of new LARPers. From the top down, there were no rules surrounding role play. There were some suggestions, and those suggestions were not taken as rules. Too, I was not there, but I did hear from the whole executive staff when it came to the speaking like disseminating rules and everything. There was just a lot of confusion about that. So why am I talking about rules when I should be talking about role play? That's because in year 3, we will have rules for role play. We will have mechanics for how role play works, and they should be followed just as stringently as combat rules and other mechanical rules because they are just as important. If we come up with all these mechanical rules for combat and balancing and people don't follow them, that's frustrating for people for a lot of different reasons. And when role play rules are not followed, it is also frustrating for a lot of different reasons. So I'm still working on finalizing those rules, but you can rest assured that it is going to look along the lines of something like this. From the time the game starts till the time the game ends, you are always in character. That is a rule. If you would like to have out of character conversations, we will have mechanics for doing that, but they should be done in very sensitive ways that are very quiet and discreet and away from everyone else who is playing. What this does is it eliminates what we often call LARP bleed, where if I act in a certain way with you, and that way might be in character, and that way might be curt, and maybe a little bit upsetting. Well, if I've been in and out of character all week, and everyone else has been in and out of character all week, how are you supposed to know if Michael was saying that or if Owen was saying that? In addition, let's say everyone is always in character all the time. So I'm seeing stuff already talking about thumbs up, thumbs down, neutral, sideways hands. That stuff was talked about, but it was never like, this is canon, you have to do it. We're going to release a primer ahead of time. And then before the event starts, we're going to sit down with everyone and reread the primer so that everyone is aware of the standards that everyone should be following. Um, so for those people saying like, hey, get with me and I'll tell you the hand signals, to be clear, we have not established hand signals yet. We're going to come up with which ones we think work best for the event and publish them ahead of time. So yeah, the specifics will be forthcoming, but I just wanted to say role play is going to be, I would like to make it a huge part of this game because there's some really great opportunity for that. And if people are half in, half out, there's just the potential for a lot to go wrong.
And I just want to say, as a new kind of LARPer and role player in general, it's not just that it's not immersive. It's also that it's really hard then for us to separate, right, our out of game feelings from our in game feelings. There was people that I met in game who were crazy psycho like maniacs who out of game were just the nicest people in the world because that's what people are having fun role playing. So you want to take these rules, please don't take them as a sort of um, any kind of like specific talk about anyone not doing role play well. It's not about doing role play well. It's about buying into the game and into the rules and the immersion, because then it's just easier for us to have fun and be able to kind of play the game in a way that's cognizant too of everyone's in it for a good time. We're giving each other the benefit of the doubt.
I see
I'm
this
really
one.
excited.
Yeah, I see this one question from Huskarl Galder. What constitutes game start and game end? Yeah, we're going to do it like the way that a lot of LARPs do it when they do it well, and that is we will have at the beginning of the game, we're going to have our little rules primer time, and then we're going to have a really cool theatrical immersive way of saying, at this moment, when you hear this thing or see this thing, game has started. And then for game end, we're going to make sure it is very evident game ends now, right? And that will be towards the end of the event time on site. There might be a couple hours where the game is over, and people are still obviously like milling around and stuff, and they can be in character if they want. But what we're not going to have happen is say game is over, but please still play the game, but anything you do doesn't count. We're not going to have that tail end. We're going to say we're going to push it till as late as makes sense to say now game is done. Now it's time to take pictures and pull out your phones and get social media and all that. I don't know what equipment we're going to have. Some people do a big horn, some people do a bell, some people just disseminate the information out and say at this time on this day, but we will make it very well known that game is now over.
And always remember, if you do want to step out of game for a while, there is going to be the out of game camp still. So if you need to take a little bit of time to yourself and you're worried about spending too much time in character, you are able to take yourself out for a little bit.
Sure. These are just rules for when you want to role play, because there will be hand signals for role play right now. But in that's the case, then you're setting yourself out for, obvious reasons.
All right, let's move on to the next question. If the goal is to move towards PvE, what does winning look like? Will the keystone to victory still be the economy? I think Micah's got this one.
More secrets for now, but no, the goal will not be the economy. That's going to be tied into a huge lore drop, new stuff that's coming. One of the things I wanted to correct was a cool, engaging win condition, where it's going to revolve around the whole change we're making to the game, but it is a secret right now. But rest assured, it is not just an economic victory that you're going to be looking out for. It's going to be something else that's super cool.
Okay.
All right. Will there be changes to the lore to rectify the coding of the cultures, the Rivlins being the plucky good guys versus the, quote, mean invading Hadrians, for example? Yes, our plan, we're not really trying to retcon anything. We would like to change the way the narrative is presented to ensure that all four of the cultures have equal stake. It's a little bit more neutral in terms of nobody's really the good guy, nobody's really the bad guy. We don't want to feel that. We have bad guys at the event. They're the orcs, and they're the undead. That's the role that they fulfill within the foundation of the game. But for everybody else, you should feel free to go into the lore understanding that, your character might be a little bit more gray or however you want to play them, but that's really up to you. We're going to be keeping pretty much everything. Yes, the Hadrians did invade the land of the Rivlins and the Vaterkeen. They may have added some stability, according to some. The Rivlins were the original settlers of the land, but they weren't the only ones, and they did not necessarily seem committed to keeping the land if you ask a Hadrian, etc., etc. We're going to be asking you guys in general to start taking a more nuanced approach to the cultures in a way that encourages roleplay and does not retcon the lore. Specifically for the lore, again, another set of lore drops are going to be coming. At some point, we are going to be probably doing something similar to this. We'd like to do working together with each culture, so we'll probably put it out to you guys and we'll say, hey, Hadrians, what time works for you guys to sit down with staff? We would like to hash out what of the lore that was created by the players we would like to see canonized within the event, because I know that there's a lot of it. I understand that the Vaterkeen have all their tribes or whatever you guys have created. You've created all this great stuff, but none of it's canon. Well, we'd love to work with you guys to make it canon, so we're going to do that at some point coming up here real soon.
Cool. There were a lot of guild related questions. So I broke this into 2 questions that I felt sort of addressed all of the guild related questions together. There is a guild registry was suggested a long time ago to keep guilds honest and not stepping on each other's toes. Will there be any changes to how guilds are started, run, function in that same vein? B, if the guilds are registered, would it be possible to provide funds to them to help with operations?
So we would like to start looking at registering the guilds. It's more so just we'd like to be able to keep track of all of them. I don't necessarily know yet how we want to work that exactly. I think that's one of the things we still have to hash out. But we do want to start working more closely with the guilds. We're not necessarily interested in running the guilds. We'd love for that to still be on a player level. So if you and your 5 buddies come to Reckoning and you're like, well, we're going to form our own guild, go for it. That sounds great to us. We don't necessarily need to force any particular thing on you. We just want to ensure that everything is kind of welcoming to everyone. We don't want to have too much of a exclusionary aspect of the game as far as the guilds do go, which is part of why we'd like to kind of work on registering them. Funds, we're not really going to be able to provide funds to any guilds. That's just not something we're looking at doing right now. But you guys are welcome to create your guilds and roleplay within them. And any money you want to spend on developing those guilds, like bringing flags, your own tents, etc., to the game, that is welcome. Oh, in-game funds. That's actually not a bad idea. We could look at working with the guilds in terms of some of the mechanical stuff that we have already hinted at so far. But overall, well, we'd have to see. I think the money.
It's gonna have to be a wait and see.
Yeah, the money that the guilds have, I think that really would just be on you guys. How effective you are at playing the game will determine how much money your guild has. Whether you guys are pooling your money as a guild. We are looking at a system for tracking funds and other resources from year to year. We might be able to include guild funds in that.
I like that. We'll definitely make a note of that. All right. The next one, we kind of already answered it a little bit. This is a Jaeger specific question and about sort of what you've done already. Specifically, the question was, the Jaegers worked hard to trade the Sword of Hillshire as a peace offering between the 4 factions during the ritual. While the Jaegers and most of the Riblins are unfortunately at odds with one another during Reckoning 2, will this action on the Jaegers' part be honored lore-wise for Reckoning 3? The Jaegers being based on the Witchers, which were neutral parties. They did what they believed they was best for the greater good. Here is kind of how I'm understanding this. We're not going to retcon anything, and we wouldn't ask you to like retcon your experiences. We are like recalibrating the game and still figuring out how the lore part is going to work. So we might not necessarily be picking up right where Reckoning 2 left off. So who knows how much kind of immediately what you did will affect the next thing. But that's kind of how I understand it. Micah?
Yeah, so we're not going to retcon anything. If it happened, it happened. It's not to us to say, well, no, we're changing all that stuff. We did talk about meeting with all the factions and 6-on faction like we're doing now, but with the individual factions to see what you guys think about canonizing what's currently happened. But as far as what's going to like make it into the the lore on the site, some of that stuff might not need to be in there. And then as far as how your guild might be perceived in years moving forward, I think that is going to be easier to have conversations about that when everyone's following the role play rules. So I think some of the issues we saw in the past haven't been an issue of whether or not it should be canon, or my guild wasn't necessarily perceived as it should have been, but rather an issue of role play. So I think when we talk about some of these things, I don't necessarily think the issues we think are going on are the actual issues. I think there's an underlying like structure of role play and rules that we're going to fix. And then in year 3, things should be better.
All right. Food questions. I think we already answered those beforehand. All right. The question that we've gotten a bunch in the chat and in this form is, what locations are we looking at for Reckoning 3? We're going to try and keep it in the mid-US. So we're looking at Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, that sort of general mid-US area. We haven't nailed it down yet. The venue is going to be one of the first things we're going to try and do. We're still kind of working on a timeline. My hope is once we have a timeline nailed down, we can kind of share that with you guys, if nothing else for accountability, because we need to kind of stick to a timeline here. Venue is going to be the hardest one. That's going to be the one by which everything else revolves around. So that's going to affect when the date's going to be, how long it could be, and where it's going to be. We're going to try and keep it the same sort of travel distance to make it as easy as possible for people to still travel to it from wherever they've been traveling to it. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add there? I think we can pretty definitively say that it won't be at the castle again. So I don't want anyone to get excited about that.
Yeah, no more castle. We're not going to do that.
Oh, we will all miss Dave, I'm sure.
And the dog.
Just
Dave
as an
has a
attorney, it
standing
was just
invitation.
a liability nightmare.
King Dave has a standing invitation. He can come out whenever he wants.
We love Dave. Dave's great.
We love
The
Dave.
dog was great.
Oh, that was the dog?
It
Aw,
was a dog.
I miss the
Well,
dog.
Dave had a dog.
So yeah, so we don't have a location nailed down, but we'll let you know. Okay. Also, I just want to say in the middle of this, Sean told me to not say and now I can't stop saying So sorry if I'm saying it twice as much. That's Sean's fault, everyone. What actions, just kidding, I'm just bad at talking. What actions will staff be taking to ensure there's plenty of story for players to interact with? Much of Reckoning 2 was a player run and invented story. While I really enjoyed the story that played out, it was unfortunate to have such a long event with very little to do, unless you purposely made something to do. I think this goes back to, do you want to have something specific you want to say? What I was just going to say is, this goes back to nailing down the rules and what the lore is, but we super hear you in that regard. I think we kind of answered it already, though, in the cultures versus factions thing. Micah, do you feel the same, or are we good?
Yeah, no, just real quick. That's literally the main thing we're working on, is just tons more stuff to do, content for you to sink your teeth into, and I think that's going to fix a lot of issues with twiddling thumbs, things like that, and also with the balance of PvP versus PvE. So yeah, that's 100% the main thing we're creating is more stuff.
All righty then. Can we start a monster hunting system to give those interested in combat something more to do? We already answered that. All right. What is the role of a player liaison versus staff? My guys didn't really answer this, but so I'll just kind of say what my personal view is. I would like for us to rid this event of the word player liaison. I just don't think it really fits in with how we are going to be approaching staff and NPCs and volunteers. It just, to me, it's a confusing use of words because it's, I don't know, it kind of encourages both out of game and in game elements in a way that doesn't really make sense to me. So what I can say to that is we are going to have whatever the roles are written out, mapped out, so that everyone knows exactly what their duties are and what their obligations are and when they can have fun and stuff. I also think it's fair to say that, like, we're trying to think of ways to ensure that whoever is working the event doesn't get burnt out and gets to also like play more. So that's another reason why it's taking so long, is I'm really trying to be cognizant of how best to balance it so that everyone gets to have fun and play and not be just on 24/7 and not engaging with the thing that we're trying to have fun with too, you know? So I don't know if I
That's not good.
Knew who to go to or had someone that they could go to if they couldn't find a staff member kind of thing, and then those player liaisons would be able to get a hold of us in. So it's sort of just like they were players and then they were meant to act in a staff capacity, like in connecting players to staff in the absence of someone that was actually staff. So like
we won't have to worry about that because we're actually going to have designated full transparency across the board, designated staff. We're going to have roles that are communicated with one another. We're going to have a better understanding of what people's roles and positions are. And though, like, we do really appreciate people wanting to be player liaisons or and staff. No, just real quick. People that want to be involved, we appreciate that, but we want to make sure that there is a foundation and actual structure towards this system and stay on top of that. So, though we are taking in consideration of previous staff and previous positions that people have kind of filled, we're going to have an actual structure to that and be more communicative. We're going to communicate with you guys what's actually happening. So, Joe, if you want to hop back in there, I just want to like hop in for a second and fill in and say, like, it is appreciated that people want these positions, but
no, you're good. I had a point, but I kind of lost track of what I was going to say. You're good. Don't worry about it.
I kind of want to address something there too, that we're gonna be addressing the fact that obviously there are things that we want to improve on from the last one. Us saying that and thinking that and trying to creatively think on how we want to change some of the ways things were run last year to make it a little more efficient process this year is not a statement on anyone who was in staff, like their supportive role, or anyone who was involved in the last game and their contributions or anything like that. It was my opinion. This is just my Gabby's opinion from what I saw from Reckoning 2. I felt like that there was a lot of staff that was burnt out, and that made me really sad. And I really want to try and avoid that next year. So when we're saying there's problems, it's not like a past staff messed up. It's I want to make that. I want to make sure that is more fun for everyone too. And so it's a little bit more clear. So yeah, I think we're going to keep the role of player liaison, but I do think we're going to change it and just sort of define it better and make sure everyone kind of understands the different roles, if that makes any sense. Did I make that more confusing, or does that make sense to you guys too?
No, you're good. That's basically what I was building to. Yeah.
Oh, continue on.
All right. How long will next year's event be? Kind of already talked about it. We can't really nail it down. Our goal is approximately 4 days, but we can't commit to that until we have a venue. All right. When during the year will Reckoning 3 happen? Like I said, we're trying to change as little as possible to the logistics of the game, since we'd like for this to be a recurring thing that people can keep on their calendar and plan around and stuff. That makes stuff like budgeting easier. So we're trying to keep it a spring event. We won't know until we nail down a venue. I know that answer sucks, but that's just straight up where we're at logistically speaking. I think that's pretty much all we can answer there. All right. This is another sort of guild question. I wasn't sure if this was different than the other guild question. So forgive me if it's answered, but Mike could just say if it's been answered already. But are members of guilds able to act in the best interest of the guild? Oh yeah, it is kind of different. And act in accordance with the guild's goals. For example, the Jaegers being monster hunters, we wanted to unite the people against the orc, but didn't have the support of the Riblins to do it. Or we need to function in the best interest of the faction/culture alone. So the way that I was kind of understanding this is like function in a way that feels the most fun, and we're hopeful that the rules that Mike is going to give are going to make those sort of questions easier to understand.
Yeah,
Um,
so guilds are still a player thing. So we support players creating this content. How those guilds are seen and perceived and reacted to, that's for the most part something that happens all in game and as character content. We don't have rules or mechanics surrounding guilds. So um, that's the way that is. But I do think when we get some more solidified role play rules and give you guys more stuff to do and more to interact with, that stuff should be better. But again, we're going to consistently take feedback. So if I'm wrong and all the changes we make do nothing to make that better, then we want to know and we want to fix it moving forward. So I think that's a thing I know a lot of people are concerned about. But I say, yeah, trust us to. We haven't earned your trust yet, so give us time to earn your trust on that. I did see one question that dovetails to this in the chat about how-to videos. We are going to release either a primer or something along the lines ahead of time about rules, both role play and combat and mechanics ahead of the game, and then we will do a really in-depth rules and role play run through before the game starts as well, just so that even though we're gonna beat the dead horse and say read this, watch this, read this, one's gonna have to sit down and listen while we go through it all again before the game starts, so that nobody has an excuse to say I didn't know.
All right, next question. Will there be actual consequences for dying in Reckoning 3? Which I see someone just asked in the chat. Yes, just to keep it as simple and not give away too much in terms of some of the mechanics and lore stuff we are working on against secrets. Yes, at Reckoning, death will have consequences, and we'll be putting out to you guys how it will work in the future. But rest assured that with the lore, the mechanics will change and vice versa. So look out for that. Could we create a crafting system and even quests for crafting special types of potions to encourage more RP and action for non-coms? Yes, I think Sasha's got all this, but we are definitely working on some stuff for this.
Yeah, so as a non-combatant myself, making sure that there are lots of fun things for the artisans and non-combatants to do is definitely a priority. At no point do we want players to feel like they're stuck in a position where they can't do anything, or that the class they chose is at a disadvantage to another class in some way. So as we develop ways for the artisans to do fun, cool things and have new abilities, we will be letting you guys know.
cool. What updates will there be to the combat system? You'll know when we know, but there will be many or some. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But you'll know when we know.
Next question, is it
Which
possible to make shields breakable? Pretty much the same thing. We're going to be figuring that out. We'll let you guys know.
Same for the next few questions, to be honest.
Vote on that and speak up to that. If a lot of you guys feel like shields need to be breakable, because I know this is a very strong topic for a lot of people, a lot of combatants, like communicate with us and reach out.
Should we do like a survey? Is that
yes,
a
we're gonna
thing?
we're gonna do a survey. There will be
Okay,
many
because I didn't
surveys going
realize that
forward.
was a. Do other LARPs have this thing, this shield breaking mechanic?
Some do, some don't. Some make you take skills to do that. Some make it when you create your character, you get an ability that does it. Some have it where there are items that can break shields. So it's all over the map, and we should absolutely do a survey just to let you guys know. I would not be surprised if that survey comes back 50-50, and we'll split, and then
Really?
we have to make an executive decision. But we will have a survey that lets you guys vote on it. Not to say that we're going to necessarily do what the crowd says, because again, it could be 50-50, and then we just have to make a decision.
And
But we're going to
yeah.
play test this as well on our end and see what makes sense. But yeah, it's depending on the LARP you go to, it's all over the place.
Wow, so this is one of the great controversies of LARP, shield
It is
breaking.
one of
I
the
learn
great controversies of combat LARPs. Yes.
There are a
I
lot of
am
those.
learning so much and I'm so excited. Also I want to point out the whole, yeah, we definitely want to give community agency and get your guys' input. We can't possibly do everything that everyone wants. So have a little grace for us there too. Please, or don't and just be mad, but we'd rather you not do that. Do we have to be interested in involved in gold games between the factions? generally no, right? You don't have to be interested in any part of it. There's going to be no part that you are going to be forced to role play with, is my understanding. There's going to be a lot of different things that hopefully appeal to a lot of different types of people. Um, Micah, do you want to take these next few?
Because I just came back and sat down from the Highland Games. I don't
Oh,
have.
okay.
Can you read it out to
Okay,
me?
okay.
What's
Then
the next one?
I'll keep reading them. I just feel bad. Leading up to the event, is it possible to get more information and a general understanding of what the plot will look like for Reckoning 3? Yes, we're going to do lore
Yes.
drops. I don't want to keep sort of repeating that unless there's something specific.
We're gonna do lore drops, and yeah, we'll have all that communicated well ahead of time.
And we're going to have it
Everything
communicated in
will
several
go up
different
on the website, and a couple weeks before the event, I'll be sending out an email with like last minute things you need to know.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully, yeah, we'll have those things out well beforehand, and we'll have lots of different ways for you to learn, to, acknowledge the fact that people learn in different ways. We're basically going to leave no stone left unturned, so that there's no excuses to not be familiar with all of this stuff as much as possible, obviously. But the rules will be very, very important. The lore, we'll just make sure everyone has access to it. What are you looking for in a player liaison or staff member? So this one I would like for everyone to kind of give some input on. Here's kind of how I feel, because we're all going to be sort of addressing this as a big team. This is one of the things that we're certainly all doing together. I think this is a really good question. For me, we're generally looking for people who are willing to commit time before and during the event, which we know a lot of you are. Someone who's able to handle taking on different roles. So there's some in-game roles that you'd have, there's some out-of-game roles you would have, and you'd have to be able to parse between those. Someone who wants to be involved in order to encourage role play so that they can, they can yes and as much as they can no but. That's really important. And someone who is cognizant of character bleed and is experienced somewhat, at least in role play. I think those are really important for kind of putting everyone else on the right note. There will be lots of experiences, I think, for different people to get, or lots of different ways for different people to get involved. But yeah, that's generally what I'm looking for. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to say to that.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, just real quick, it's what I would look for in people that would, again, we want to get away from the play liaison term, but people who are more invested in providing a really good game for others. You have a really strong character and you have goals for your character. I want you to be able to LARP and do that. And I don't think it'd be a fit for like a staff or volunteer leadership role. If you are like, man, I love making other people's stuff happen, and I'm super open and flexible, and I'm yes anding, that's more the personality we would look for. But it would be like taking a back seat in terms of your own role play. So that as you will, if you do get to whatever the process looks like, we don't know what it's going to look like yet, of staff volunteer, what the word is. It will be a position of taking a back seat to other people, playing deferentially and stuff like that. And I don't want anyone to take that lightly. Yeah.
All right, cool. Will there be a new player training course to teach new players combat etiquette and safety? Micah,
Yeah, so we're going to do, like I said, the role play primer we'll have released online ahead of time. The combat rules will have released online ahead of time. We do have plans to make that in a video form ahead of time. And then before the event, I'm going to make everyone sit through it again. And then we'll break out into groups in your cultures so that you can get even more specific questions answered. But if we've done our job well and over-explained things to the point where everyone is rolling their eyes and saying, I get it, then no one should have any questions after that. But that's I'm gonna beat these rules into you guys. So be careful what you ask for, because everyone's like, are we gonna have this information? You're gonna be so annoyed with me at the end of it when I've explained the same thing for the 4th time and asked everyone to be quiet so they can listen to me read this boring rule set, because I'm gonna make sure everyone knows it.
we could never be annoyed with Owen.
You absolutely could.
Yeah, that's true. I'm annoyed with Micah all the time. No, I'm not. Just kidding. All right. What are plans to balance the good factions humans versus the bad factions, monsters. I felt at Reckoning 2, the orc faction was significantly lower in number and had to compensate by being OP, which usually just evolved into a dozen people swarming one orc until it decided to fall down. So we're aware of this issue, plan to address it. Joel, is there anything like specific you want to say there, other than, we're going to address it in a future lore drop?
Yeah, I mean, the orcs are intended to be OP to begin with. It's not supposed to be like, oh, me and my buddies are going to go casually hunt orcs in the woods. It's supposed to be like, oh, me and my buddies are going to go get our asses beat by like 2 orcs in the woods. That's sort of where like the feral orcs were coming into play with being like a lot less organized and a lot more spread out, whereas the orcs that are armored and with shields are meant to be just a lot more fucking brutal. Kind of to go back to what Micah was just going over with the rules and all that, that will be explained as well with monsters and everything, falling into that category. All those rules will be laid out ahead of time, so everybody will know, okay, orcs deal 2 damage for every 1 that I swing, so like it's a bigger deal to fight one of them than it is to fight somebody that's possessed or what have you. So yeah, to answer that question, yeah, they're meant to be OP. The undead, I know the rules are a little bit different, but we're still fleshing that out as well. And possessed only deal 1 damage or whatever. They're essentially a human. So
All right, here's my favorite question. We going to get elves and shit? To which elves maybe, shit yes, all still in the works. You guys will know when we are putting stuff out, we're still looking at how we want to work various other new things into the lore.
Sean, you got my bulk order for all the Elf on the Shelf dolls that I wanted to work in this year. That's what the players want, right? They want just
Nah,
one of
man.
Elf on the Shelf watching.
What the players want is to have ambiance and not bullshit. No, like again, communicate with me. They say don't direct message us. They're like, don't direct message us for things. I want everyone to absolutely direct message me for
Ooh, be
ideas.
careful what
on
you wish for,
prompts.
Marissa.
That's Sean. That is just Sean.
That is
Rest
just
of us
Sean.
I am
prefer
trying to do
Everyone
rest
do
of us
it.
prefer
People
official
have
terms
already
of communication.
people have reached out to me, and I am super appreciative of that because there are people with 3D printers, there are people with other things like laser engravers that these things can come in handy, and this
Absolutely.
can set us apart as a LARP. Like we want to have the highest immersion, we want to have the best props, the best experience across the board. So I think as long as we have that communication and people reach out with to me and with me, like let's make it happen. Let's come up with some really cool props. Let's come up with some really cool monsters and aesthetics. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid to reach out and say, "Hey, like I thought about this thing and I'm going to do a player ran event. What do you
That
think
was
about
so
this?"
inspiring, Sean. I really think so.
I
So like, yeah, go on, Joel.
I love that I love that you can go by Prop Master Paymon. It sounds like a rap name or something. Like I feel like you need to drop an album.
I just want to come up with really cool things for people to feel like this event, this LARP in general, is better than any other LARP, and we're going to make it that way. Like, Reckoning is going to be one of the best LARPs in America, hands down. It's going to happen. Have faith. We'll make it work.
All right, what are our plans for the magic system and overall implementation of fantasy aspects into the game and lore? So yes, we do have big plans for altering, introducing, and adapting the magic system that already exists within Reckoning. I would say by and large, you guys should not see that much of a change. You should understand that artisans are going to have the most access to spells, sages a little bit less, warriors not at all, essentially. But we're looking at adjusting some of the spells to fit our new mechanical framework for the system. We're looking at adding new spells that might be fun. One of the biggest things that we're definitely going to work on ahead of time is making sure that everyone understands the spells and how they work. We want everyone to be able to role play appropriately when someone casts a spell on you and not have anyone be too surprised by them. But yes, overall, there's going to be a lot of new magical stuff coming. I don't think that it will be totally new to what you guys have seen so far, but it will be different.
All right. Any new plans on adding influence of non-medieval historical cultures to new or existing factions, such as Greece or Rome? There are no plans to introduce new cultures at this time, is what was written here.
Yep.
And so that is how we feel. Great.
So as far as introducing new things, the undead, that's our new thing. That's what's coming out. That's what's new. The intention is that it is generally what you would expect. They are undead. They look evil. They are evil. They are there to destroy humans and convert you to being dead with them. We will put out a lot more about them in terms of lore and mechanics. You can expect that to be pretty big, just as the orcs have had their own rules and lore associated with them. We're going to have pretty much the same thing for the undead. The biggest change, though, or I should say difference between the orcs and the undead, the orcs are open to pretty much everybody. We're working on all kinds of new things for them. If you are interested in playing an undead, you can. It is on the table. There's no gating. They are going to have the same ability for someone to join the game and jump right into being an undead if that's what they wish. The only, I guess, barrier to entry to joining the undead that will not exist for a new player is that we expect pretty much all of the undead and the orcs as well, kind of how it was last year, to have a non-orc kit that they can switch into. So, if it's Friday night and we're doing soup time in all of the culture camps and you want to go participate in soup time, well, if you show up in an undead kit, they're probably just going to beat the crap out of you, and then you're not going to get to have any soup. So that doesn't sound very fun to me. But if you change into, if it's literally just a tunic and pants and belt, and it's green or whatever, and you're not wearing your undead makeup anymore, that's all for it. So, pretty much, I think that's all I got for it right now.
Okay. So this next question is kind of a big one. And so I want to make sure we address it in full. All right, so here's the question. Can we please have a specific non-com class / way of indicating someone who has PTSD? I know we don't want non-coms to abuse their invincibility, but there are some people who choose non-com because they truly would not want to be snuck up on, surrounded, and kidnapped, held for ransom, who have no intention of abusing that power, but are just trying to not have flashbacks of traumatic experiences. I know we have a great community and no one would intend to do harm. If you indicated you were speaking out of the game and asked to go free, they would respect that. But it would be cool if we had a way of indicating, please don't sneak up on this person before it becomes a problem, since once PTSD is triggered, it becomes very difficult to communicate. I'm open to our community brainstorming ideas for this / hearing their thoughts and perspectives. Just wanted to throw it out there since non-com / combatant dynamics are still evolving. Maybe not everyone with PTSD wants that openly known, but some kind of indication to give this particular non-com extra space if they want. It could be helpful if we're now going to be vulnerable to kidnappings and being held at knife point for ransom kind of things. Thanks for all you're doing. So here is like generally kind of how I want to address that overall. We're thinking of these rules, right? Micah's putting a lot of thought into game running and into combat rules specifically to make sure that this kind of thing is possible and has a way in which this person could feel safe at this event. I think we are open to, once we have those rules and stuff nailed down, if someone who is specifically feeling like the rules in some way, their understanding of them isn't addressing this, I think we'd be certainly open to hearing that. But otherwise, if the way that we're envisioning this goes well, this type of person should feel safe and heard and seen at our event. If there's anything else you guys want to add on.
So the roleplay rules that will be instituted will have mechanics for buying out of that kind of scene. and that stuff will, and not respecting another player's gesture to buy out of that kind of stuff is going to be met with consequences. So when I say these are rules, they're rules. Just, and you can get kicked out of the game for not following them. So we want to take that very seriously. Um, I agree with that person's sentiment that I don't think anyone in this community would ever do that intentionally, but it is correct. We want to have systems in place to prevent that before it starts. So currently, the rules will revolve around being able to opt out of stuff to say in character, I'm not comfortable with this, and out of character, you can't see me anymore, don't interact with me, I poofed out, I'm gone. I think that question implies that they would like some sort of indicator physically to say that don't even start that kind of stuff with me. Until I saw that question, that hadn't come to mind. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. It seems like it would be a pretty easy fix to have some sort of, some people have buttons and pins
Can
and
I
patches.
This is a sincere question. Is the purple for non-combatant not that I know it doesn't specifically say, hey, I have an, you know, I have an exacerbating condition
Right.
to be extra careful. But it's my understanding, like if I see a non-combatant, they should not be messed with in this way,
So far,
right?
the purple stuff only applies to specifically combat rules. It does not apply to role play that might
Okay,
include those
I
other things.
see.
Now, the role play mechanics, when they're enforced and when we have them out there, should include rules to say someone, approaches you threateningly with a knife. They're not planning on engaging in combat, but they might say, I'm kidnapping you and I'm taking you to so and so. If the role play rules are respected, they have a hand
Mhm.
signal or something or a trigger word to say, nope, I'm not engaging in this with you. And that other player immediately respects it and is like, never mind, you're not worth it, and runs away, right? Now, this player's concern is that that should never happen to them entirely. Not every non-com also wants that experience. So this is something that I do think we need to take seriously, but I think the non-com badge sash is too broad for the specific scenario. So
Got it.
we'll take that in consideration, and we'll find a way to make sure that there's some sort of a visual interpretation of. I right now don't even want to do any sort of kind of intense role play. I do want to try and make that happen, but I also do want to say that this is role play where we can't cover everything. Um,
Yeah.
like we can say, hey, this means don't do X, Y, Z, but then maybe D happens and it's not in the rules, and that's something else that goes on. We want to be sensitive to this and we want to make sure it's handled well, but there might be an instance which we can't rule out every single possibility.
Right now we don't have anything like a specific color or a specific symbol beyond just the purple. I mean, in my experience, I had my purple hood fall off at one point last year, and so I ended, I got whacked a few times. It was an accident, but like even in that kind of situation, it's a little disarming. I'm more than happy to work with you guys to come up with a alternative color or a specific symbol. If people want to reach out to me specifically about that, I'm happy to take that on.
Okay. Cool. And please, also like this particular question feels very important. So if you feel like we haven't, if any of these questions, if you feel like we haven't answered them fully, don't hesitate to kind of follow up in the different ways. We're going to be looking at those and staying on top of it. And we want to make sure it's fun for everyone. All right. Is there going to be more present security at future events? I've never felt safe camping on site since, as far as I could tell, our past security was the honor system. We're going to be addressing this in a more concrete way. You heard Sean talk about how he's going to be like kind of leading that. I don't know if there's anything specific you want to say yet, Sean, but we still have, I will just say we
Yeah.
have some logistical things to nail down reinsurance before we can super address exactly how we're going to do this. But yeah, go on, Sean.
So we're not gonna delve into the specifics, but as of now, the main point of security: keep the guests safe, keep the staff safe, reduce damage to the venue, ensure compliance with liquor licenses, make sure there's not minors drinking, prevent intruders, make sure everybody that paid for their tickets are there, make sure there's not people that are just showing up and expecting to have a good time like may have happened in the past. Maintain timely and orderly access to the property. Make sure whatever venue that we're operating on. We're not going against the wishes of that venue. And any issues that may happen will be taken care of. There will be a designated area for circumstances that, you know, none of us are like expecting bad things to happen, but they will happen. And it's making sure we have people that are responsible and able to help out in that situation, make sure these things don't go wrong. And if there are issues, that they're being addressed accordingly, properly. And as far as my role in security, if anything happens, people will be removed from the event. There will be future bans, and everything will be addressed accordingly. So that's pretty much all I have on that. I'm gonna mute myself again. Gabby, take back.
Okie dokie. How are kit approvals going to work? Well, actually, really quick, my team, does anyone need like a bathroom break or anything? No? Everyone good? Cool. How are kit approvals going to work moving forward? Are all kits going to need to be reapproved? Will it go back through the official email? Please, will list of approved items be kept updated when new things are approved to assist new players, etc.? Sasha, is this a you question?
Sure, I can take this one. So yes, unfortunately, all of your kit items do need to be resubmitted for approval. I know that's kind of frustrating, but we are really hoping to create a well-rounded and immersive experience. So unfortunately, yep, we do need you to submit everything again. That will be going through the official email. I know some people seem to be pretty happy about that from the questions we got. They wanted the email back. Please don't send anything yet, though. We're still working on updating those style guides. Nothing's going to be changing drastically, but just little updates. And once we do start doing the approvals again, I'm going to keep track of items that are approved and lists of easily purchasable items like, a pair of pants from Epic Armory. I will make a list of those and make sure they are available to players so that you have them at your reference.
All right. If we want to create personal quests for folks and we need the help of other staff, can we craft there and could we be provided with coin to facilitate the rewards? Here, Micah, do you have something specific you want to say about that? Basically, the way that I'm kind of understanding this is you can craft and create roleplay opportunities via quests in ways that kind of vibe with the lore, but we request that, as these lores and rules drop, you figure out a way to make these roleplay opportunities and quests work without necessarily needing our help, but then we're also going to be wanting to approve stuff. So I'm not really sure how that works, frankly,
Yeah,
Micah.
so I know players are constantly wondering like, hey, this was touted as a way for players to create lore and do their own thing. In theory, that's really good. But if we're also providing a game with mechanics and rules and ways for you to win, players want to know that the lore they're creating isn't just something I did. I did it and nothing happened. So this is where there's a line, right? When we talk about you guys communicating quest ideas, we want to work with you, but we're also going to have stuff you to interact with that we're going to come up with. And it is kind of up to you guys to I don't want to repeat what's been said in previous years because that hasn't quite worked out every time. So far, the only thing we can plan for is the stuff that we come up with. So when I say we're going to have a lot more stuff for you to do, I mean that, and that also means that that's the kind of stuff that will give rewards and give benefits in game. Stuff you guys come up with, if we don't know about it, we can't promise that we'll have rewards for it. So that's when we say communicate that kind of stuff to us ahead of time. We can't promise that your quest is going to be able to have any kind of in-game impact beyond role play. But as we've seen in previous years, some of those impacts can be huge, even without any kind of mechanical reward. So again, pivoting to we're going to provide a lot more content and be ready for that. I wouldn't be so eager to come up with a ton of stuff ahead of time because you're worried you won't have stuff to do. And also there's a concept that a lot of LARPs have called find out in game. A lot of this stuff will be find out in game. We don't want you guys to plan everything ahead of time and say, I'm going to do ABC and CED is going to happen, because you never know what might happen. Other players have other plans, and those plans might interact with yours. We might have surprises for you, and that might interact with you. So I know that in the past, there's been this worry about sitting out and twiddling your thumbs. And so that's where this need of, I want to plan this so I have something fun to do. This year, we're going to have a lot of stuff for you to do. So if you still put all your eggs in the, well, I only want to do the stuff I've planned basket, that might not work out as well this year. It's a good problem to have, because there's going to be other stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. Did anyone else want to add anything? Cool. This is a funny question because I didn't totally know what it was asking. What has happened with the orcs? So I just wrote Joel.
Will help.
Orcs are back, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back. We're back, and there's more of us. So brush up on those monster fighting rules.
Which we will release.
Which, yeah. When
Yeah,
we release them.
Yeah, exactly. And there should be a camp for us this year, so we'll work out what that mechanic looks like with potential raids and stuff like that. But that is the plan. We have a lot of orcs that are really excited to shift their focus to their orc being their primary character for this event. So I'm going to do whatever I can to facilitate that. So see how it goes. It's a little dependent on location as well. I hate that I have to keep saying that, but a lot of what I want to do is dependent on the location. So, but yeah, orc camp, hooray!
So
Yay.
that leads into the next question: are we going to have an undead camp? To that end, the answer is probably no. We're not really going to have an undead camp. We might have a space that is set aside for the undead. It might have a tent and some other things for them, but in general, the expectation is not going to be that the undead players have enough like camp equipment to create their camp. You know, we're not expecting the undead to necrotize some tents and set them
Let's
up, and
just,
that's where they're going to have to sleep and all that.
That's only
Let's
because
make a
this is
requirement.
new. But
Yeah, true. Let's make a requirement that every undead has to bring a gravestone. Like, we're gonna have one Halloween pass. They can buy a gravestone, show up to the event with it, we'll
so
set it
go
up.
to Spirit, go to Spirit Halloween ahead of time. Go to your local
Hell
decrepit
yeah.
mall.
Or
No,
just
so
go to a
this is
cemetery and steal
this is
gravestones.
because
Just
this was
kidding,
the
don't do
first
that.
year with the
Whoa,
undead. But
whoa.
keep in mind everything that we're saying now is because this is what's for Reckoning 3. This does not mean that Reckoning, future Reckonings will be this way. But because undead is new, we can't promise we'll have enough people to make it, its own camp. So right now we're not having plans for that. The event is still off in the future. But yeah, with what Liam said, probably not.
We would like the undead to have a relatively low barrier to entry. You know, we've all seen the orc kits. They are elaborate and well crafted and all that other stuff. But we would like the ability to have pretty simple undead kits. We haven't come up with names for any of them yet, but you know, as simple as a kit could be for any of the human cultures, pretty much the same level of requirement is going to apply for the undead. You know, we just put on a little bit more makeup and we pretend that we're dead, etc.
I believe that we're planning on having videos too, as well, for the mechanics across the board, not only for combatants but non-combatants alike. Like, we're gonna have clear direction, clear rule sets. Things are gonna be hashed out. So when it comes down to the mechanics of battle, you're not gonna have the same questions. It's gonna be hashed out. You're gonna have a clear directive.
Okay. We had a question just about getting lore nailed down, major battles, maps, blah blah blah. We haven't nailed these down yet. When we know, you'll know. I think this is a good question, and this segment of this Q&A on what are some of the changes that you think will help create a better LARP experience? So I think one, we've sort of already addressed how we are hoping to make changes on this side of things to help create a better LARP experience. Two, I think that we also all have sort of our personal opinion on how you can also kind of take steps to approach forward, and how we hope that you kind of reframe the way we're approaching this in a way to make this all a little bit easier. Um, and I keep saying, God damn it, Sean, you're in my head. So for me, these two reckonings are the only things that I have done. So the first year we had pretty simple rules, and I like adopted this strange kid who's now my like LARP son, right? And because we had very minimal rules and I didn't really know what I was doing, I was able to mostly follow these minimal rules and create this immersive experience. The second year, I will say I felt like the rules were a little muddied. I also came really late. So I'm not trying to say on how those were done correctly or incorrectly. I'm very, very new to this area, but that made it very hard for me to role play. And that I think affected my personal LARP experience because I wanted to just go be Gwen Brightleaf. And it was hard because people were just going in and out of character. And that was really confusing for me. We're trying to be really cognizant. I know we've beat it in that we're going to be doing these rules, but I think part of that is this will create a better LARP experience on both sides of things. One, on like how we're going to be able to affect it. We're trying to give sort of guidelines and, walls in which to interact with. We also ask, though, that you kind of reframe and try and be more cognizant of that and read into it or ask us questions about it if you don't know what we're talking about with character bleed. It's something that I'm learning genuinely. Like, I'm not really familiar with all this stuff, and I'm trying to be cognizant for myself. So that's just kind of how I feel personally about that. And I think it's important when approaching these events for a million different reasons, if nothing, just for self-care.
All right, I think we should pivot into live questions now. Starting off, I'm going to ask one that I saw in the chat about the economy, which I know nothing about.
Yeah,
So,
economy.
Micah.
So when the game does not have anything for the economy to do, players hold on to their money. When the game is one note and there's really only one thing or maybe two things for you to do with your money, players hold on to it until they find it to be the most advantageous time. We are going to provide, I don't want to say an overhaul in economy rules because there's not much to an economy. You spend it, you buy it, blah, 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 but a lot more stuff for you to do with the economy. Multiple kinds of currency, not necessarily all money, and different things that are ingrained in classes that involve that as well. So it's not just the economy is this sort of nebulous thing, but rather it is involved in the game mechanics. That being said, if players want to go and do a bazaar or something like that, or have in-game player trade, they can do that. And the reason it was fun last year was because it was low stakes. If I have nothing else to spend my money on, then I'm not gonna. Then I'm just gonna go to the bazaar and spend it. That's fine. We're gonna have to make choices because it's gonna be in-game stuff. That's gonna be, if we do the math right, impossible for you to have all the money that you want to do everything you want. It will be something that will require tactics and decision making, and will be will have some some gravitas to it, and not just, I guess I'll hang on to this and spend it when I want. There will be urgency and there will be scarcity, but it will be designed in a way to make it have to role play well and be tactical and thoughtful. Otherwise, everyone just has unlimited money and they're just like, Fliff, not even counting it.
Do we want to
Yeah,
invite
we'll
people
work
on
together.
stage?
All right, are we ready for our first speaker? Theseus, you're on air.
That was so good, Sasha.
I'm so sorry.
I think you already kicked
Did
him.
that not work? Did that
Where
not
is
let
he?
you? Okay. Theseus, I invited you. You have to say yes.
Also, when you guys do
Would
this,
it be
can you
easier to just have questions pop up in the chat?
if we want, I would just say too, if we do have people, can you introduce yourself, both your in-game and out-of-game name? Would that be okay to
Oh,
ask?
okay. Theseus is on his phone. This is why I was late, because I was trying to log in on my phone. Apparently that doesn't work. Liam, explain it.
You just can't. The Discord stage thing doesn't work if you're on your phone. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe we just stick to you getting chat questions for now. Maybe once we've had the ability to test this, that for the next Q&A. But for now,
Okay.
I saw
Ours
someone
is
ask
typing, so
a question about medical responder and
right,
whether
we've
we'll
got
have a medical professional.
Liam Brightleaf
I
is
just
on
wanted to let
stage.
you know that this does work. So
so sweet.
Oh my God, hi, son.
Oh my gosh,
sweet little
hi,
baby
Mom!
boy.
All right, we
Okay,
gotta keep it
get
to
out
it.
of here.
It can't go on forever.
Do you have a question?
Do you have a
Okay.
question? Yeah. So I
Fucking
think we
Liam.
should start heading towards wrapping this up. This call's going on 2 hours. I want to be respectful of people's time.
I did see a question about the medical responder. I think the goal is yes.
Is our goal, along with insurance and all that kind of stuff, to have a medical responder site.
Sasha, did
I'm-
you respond? Oh,
I'm seeing a question about if we wanted to set up a cafe a la Skilltree, could we have an exchange for real world cash to a separate currency? My first inclination is to say no, probably not.
No.
That's would be great, but unfortunately, I think Skilltree was doing it out of the goodness of their hearts and wanting to do something fun,
So
which is
yeah,
awesome and we appreciate. I just don't think we can facilitate that right now.
right. We will have an economy that is based on not having an interference of a foreign economy, which that's what that would be doing. It'd be bringing in influence, and then someone who just has a lot more in real money than other people can come in and mess with that. So absolutely not. Will not be any way of changing real world economy for in-game economy. That's a no. But if players want to spend their real money and bring in trinkets and coffee and sell it for in-game currency, no reason that they couldn't do that. But keep in mind, there's going to be more stuff to spend your money on this year. So if your idea is to come up with an in-game business and just work at the bazaar and do that kind of stuff, I know the bazaar is an unofficial term at this point. We're going to discuss how officially we want to have in place rules for a bazaar, but I'm not going to stop anyone who wants to be an in-game merchant. You can absolutely do that. But yes, real game currency for in-game currency is a big no-no.
But we may have vendors, so that's the other thing too.
Sure. Yeah.
In the past, it's been open for discussion about having vendors, and with Thomas in the past, like he completely planned on having vendors and people selling things for money, but obviously that has to be ran under the proper channels.
Right.
Like you have to have your tax system set up. You have to have everything legally set up, and then we'll talk about that. But if you want to be a vendor, again, reach out to us as a whole, as a group, and let us know.
My take on that too, just with the amount of time that we have, the amount of things we have to do, and how much that would take for us on the business side of things, I'm guessing that might be more of a second year kind of setup than it would be a first year kind of setup. Do you think that's fair to say?
Potentially, if
Yes and no.
we will have vendors, then we'll put out an open call for them when we get to that. But that's our back burner currently because the game takes priority right now. But every LARP I've been to that has vendors has always been really cool, and that's obviously a goal of ours.
Yeah,
But
that would be sick.
this year, our first year running it, we just might not have the bandwidth to do everything we want to with the game, and also have this secondary business thing yet. But
So there's one question
no,
I've been
and our
seeing
income tax.
a lot of, which is, are Rivlins going to be allowed to wear more than peasant garb? And are there going to be royal titles? So to that end, I think yes, we are interested in opening up the amount of stuff that you can wear within each faction. At least with the Rivlins, I know that has been something that I have talked about previously. We will let you know. Don't go and buy a dress tonight. It will be something that, again, is part of the approval process. So Sasha's going to be kind of driving that. Whoever the culture lead is for the Rivlins is going to be sort of determining that general aesthetic that you guys work towards. Same goes for the in-game titles. I think we're open to adding those to the game. We just are going to have to evaluate how they work. We don't want to create scenarios where a player feels like they can do something to another player that the other player might not be comfortable with. We've kind of talked about it in the past where other LARPs do have things like that, but again, it goes back to our really robust roleplay rules. So if we were to allow that, then again, it is, if you're not comfortable with the way someone is talking to you, use your roleplay hand signals or verbal cues and let them know. But yes, we are considering adding those sorts of things to the game. We just really don't know yet. You know, the lore, we have talked about things, we've written some things, but as of right now, it is still kind of yet to be finalized.
And in terms of what people are allowed to wear, which I feel like kind of pivots off that, um, we haven't approved anything specifically or discussed anything specifically about Rivlin women being able, or I guess Rivlin anybody being able to wear higher level garb than peasant garb. My personal opinion, if you want to go glam for at least one of the nights, you should be allowed to go glam. But we'll talk about it. We'll update the style guides to include that.
I s-
Going back to Theseus's question, because we were trying to get him in here a while ago, a big amount of the contention I saw was in a limited shield shape. Due to cross cultural pollination of items, would shield shapes open up to the other factions?
Yeah, that's going to be just more of the same. We're not really sure yet, but we'll let you guys know. We would like for each culture to feel like they have the width and breadth of items as far as garb, weapons, and armor to wear at their disposal while also maintaining a defined look within each culture. But if we can find a way for that to work within each of the cultures, then yes, we will probably be allowing new stuff.
So we're gonna open this back up.
I see another question here that I don't know if we addressed. So you need some sort of sexual harassment, assault response, and prevention program. I don't super know what that.
That was when we were talking about the PTSD comment. That's a separate issue
Mhm,
that has nothing to
got
do
it.
with role playing. That kind of stuff is going to be obviously written into the signed waiver that you have to sign. That kind of stuff will not be tolerated, and we will have much more actionable and language for that. I know Gabby, you're gonna tackle a lot of that stuff, but it won't be just in word. It won't be just like don't do it. There was gonna be like everyone's gonna sign stuff and it's gonna be binding. So that's yeah, but that's separate than the role play thing we were talking about.
It really boils down to two kind of separate categories of transgression within the scope of the event. If you do something like you violate the combat rules or the RP rules in a way that the staff feels is inappropriate, other players think it's inappropriate, and overall we just determine that's not how we would like someone to behave at our event, then we will ask you to leave potentially. That is a thing that we could do. Now, if it is like, you know, actual real life crimes, theft, other things of that nature, like we're kicking you off the property and we're probably going to call the police. It's just really straightforward with regards to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so speaking on that is security. If you're caught doing something that you shouldn't be doing, we have okay, hey, I'm gonna hear you out in this situation. We'll give you the one chance to redeem yourself. But it's a one and done thing. There's not gonna be second chances offered. If you fuck up, you fucked up. You're gonna be removed from the event.
Depending on the transgression, yeah, we will also have rules put in place for violating game rules. That will be stuff we can be actionable with and say like a 3 strike and you're out with game rule sort of thing. Depending on the level of transgression. But yeah, we'll also have like a zero tolerance policy for certain things. Mm,
Yeah, as
And
far as
yeah, yeah.
abuser, sexual assault, racism, saying something against transgender, saying something against anything that could be deemed as like, hey man, maybe think about what you're saying. And if you say it, and there's an issue, for that issue, they're going to come to us. They're going to express that thing. And if we come back to you and we address the issue at hand and we say, hey, did you do this thing? Did you say this thing? You're only going to have that one and done. Let's put it at the one and done rule. Don't fuck up because you're going to be removed from the event. There's going to be zero tolerance.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that we have written stuff for that so that no one is surprised. So you'll know our policy on that ahead of time. I know it sounds nebulous right now with all that, but yeah, we'll make sure all that's written down for everyone to acknowledge ahead of time.
Don't fuck it either, though. Don't you read the rules? You understand the rules. It's
Right.
not a game.
I don't want to get into assumptions of what counts as what right now, but we will absolutely have written rules that everyone signs and agrees to, so that we can have this agreement of we do this, we respond this way, and there won't be gray area. Oh, I can tell people are kind of gearing up to have comments on this, but we'll have written stuff for it. So now's the time to acknowledge that we'll just
Should we move on to our next question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so one question is, if the age limit changes, would the Discord limit change?
Liam?
I think we will obey the general Discord rules, which I believe does permit people under the age of 8. I don't really expect there to be conversation or other things on the Discord that could be defined as strictly 18 plus. We don't want to see exceptionally sexual content for very obvious reasons. So overall, I think the Discord can remain as within the scope of Discord's general terms of service. But yes, if the event changes, then that's that. I think for people who may not be over whatever age we set our limit at, whether that's 18, I'm okay with them being on the Discord and participating and getting to know people. You know, I imagine that maybe someone is 17 and they might turn 18 before the next event, or maybe the event after the next one, and they say, well, I'd like to get to know people and kind of enjoy being within the community without actually getting to go to the event, then we would give them that chance. I don't want to kick people out just because they can't actually go to it, kind of.
Alrighty. I am trying to keep track of everyone's comments, so I'm very sorry if I don't see yours. There is one I had started to address, but Scarl thinks he worded it poorly. So he says, the point I was trying to make was, how does silver flow back to the people who have no clear way of making silver?
So this is kind of a side discussion we were having. We hope to have more ways for classes to make silver. Those that have no clear way of making silver, I think, is an issue of player engagement. If you don't have a way mechanically to make silver, and then you don't try and seek out ways to make silver, I expect you'll have a lot of silver. I don't know that that's an issue with the economy so much as we're going to try and weed out those instances where that could happen, but we obviously can't get to them all.
So to that end, I do think one sort of example we can give to this, because I know it was kind of the way it felt was that silver went into the hands at the beginning of the event as of the warriors and the sages, and then as they were knocked unconscious, they gave it to the artisans and the bone knitters, and then that was it. That was like A to B as far as the natural cycle of silver. We are working on ways mechanically where there will be avenues for artisans to spin silver. There will be avenues for warriors to make silver. We don't want the circle to be totally player back to staff, back to player. We would like to have a little bit of the players being able to recirculate it within themselves, but we will be creating ways where, as staff, we can facilitate a natural transfer of silver through all parties. I will say, this, I don't necessarily know this is a spoiler, but this is kind of a fun concept we had as an example would be we have an NPC who says, I am a traveling merchant, and he says, I need 10 warriors to defend me as I go from the Suzak Mar camp to the Rivlin camp or whatever. And he will pay silver to those warriors to defend his little, cart or whatever it is that he's bringing with him to the other camp, and they get attacked. Maybe in his cart he has valuable resources the warriors he hired don't know that. Maybe they want to turn on him and get that silver from him. Maybe we inform the Vaterkeen, a third party, like, hey, just so you know, there are warriors defending a cart from Suzak Mar to Rivlin's, and there's a lot of gold on that cart. And that is us kind of promoting a little bit of an avenue of play within the event. And all we really had to do was have one guy with a backpack walk from one camp to the other, and we're able to shuffle silver around through 30 hands. That's kind of our concept. I do see one thing there about banditry. Going back to our concepts about the kind of player ability for self-determination, that is one thing that I think we as staff are totally on board for. If you are playing a character and you want to engage in your own banditry, you do not need to wait for staff to tell you that that is okay. If there's a spot that everyone walks through from the Suzak Mar camp to the bazaar, and you want to stand there and hold people up, as long as they're okay with that within the scope of our roleplay rules, that's perfectly okay.
Just don't be a dick. Play the game, but be considerate.
So right. So one of the concepts, and again, I'm going to beat this dead horse. We talked about changing the culture of things. Along with role play, there's going to be this concept of play to lift. So yes, it might be a bummer that you got robbed, but what I don't want to have happen is you use the excuses of I don't like this as a person to interrupt someone else's role play. So we're gonna use the improvisation adage of yes anding. Not to say that you have to go along with everything. There's rules for that, but there should be good faith to say, you got me. I don't like that I lost all my money, but there's not really a reason why me as an individual can't play along with you right now. Because this is a game. It's make believe. And if someone does their best and they really set an amazing trap for you, it might be a bummer that you got robbed. Play along. This is going to be all about playing along, responding to other people, playing to lift their experience. And if you are a good victim of banditry at one point, then later on that person will be a gracious of something of a revenge plot to you later on. I know I'm meandering and we're getting off topic, but I would like to try and wrap this call up soon. We're going on over 2 hours, and I want to make sure that we respect people's time.
I'm okay with going into one of the other channels. I think we would want to open it up so that it's more of we can go back to not just listening to the six of us chit chat up here. But if people would like to do that,
for fun for everybody.
Well, we can do that. The one thing I would just want to emphasize is we are going to do these types of things regularly. So if everything didn't get answered today, please don't think it won't get answered in the future. We only have so much time and energy, frankly. We also are going to we're going to figure out how to do faction specific Q&As, right? Sasha, I don't know if you announced that part yet. I don't think we know.
On it briefly, yeah.
Okay, so just keep a lookout for that as well. And other than that, I would say we can wrap it up here and go to the reckoning, whoever is available. I would say let's treat these as kind of like official stuff in there. We're going to be more shooting the shit sort of. Yeah, is there anything else anyone wants to say as sort of like closing thoughts?
Any last minute, very important questions before we sign off.
I know we've lost like 10 or 15 people from the start of this. I just want to say thank you to the community for sticking around. Obviously, it hasn't been an easy couple months, and it's been a long process for the six of us as well. And there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for, stepping up and kind of bearing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
For
sure. We know it was crazy, and we're in earnest trying to make things way different moving forward. So I want to reiterate what Joel said. So yeah, thank
And
you
if you have
guys.
more questions, feel free to ask in the leadership questions forum. But I hope everybody had fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.